Before the arrival of Europeans, the Americas were home to a vibrant mosaic of indigenous cultures. These societies flourished for millennia, developing complex systems of governance, agriculture, and spirituality. From the vast empires of the Inca and Aztec to the intricate social structures of the Pueblo peoples, indigenous communities thrived in diverse environments. They possessed intricate knowledge of their ecosystems, cultivating sustainable practices that honored the delicate balance of nature. The Americas were far from an untouched wilderness. They were a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of indigenous peoples. The arrival of Europeans in 1492 shattered this world. Driven by a thirst for gold and a belief in their own superiority, European explorers initiated an era of unprecedented violence and exploitation. What followed was not exploration, but invasion. Indigenous peoples were subjugated, enslaved, and systematically stripped of their lands, resources, and cultural identities. The consequences of this encounter continue to reverberate today, shaping the social, political, and economic landscapes of the Americas. The narrative of European discovery is a dangerous fallacy that obscures the brutal reality of colonization. Christopher Columbus did not discover an empty continent ripe for the taking. He stumbled upon a land already inhabited by millions of people. His arrival marked the beginning of a cataclysmic period of disease, warfare, and cultural annihilation. Indigenous populations were decimated by diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, to which they had no immunity. The introduction of these diseases was not accidental. It was a deliberate tactic of biological warfare. European powers quickly realized the devastating impact of disease on indigenous populations and used it to their advantage. They intentionally exposed indigenous communities to infected individuals and blankets, accelerating the spread of deadly pathogens. This biological warfare, coupled with forced labor, massacres, and displacement, resulted in a demographic collapse of unimaginable proportions. The consequences of this genocide continue to haunt the Americas, casting a long shadow over indigenous communities. Following the initial waves of conquest, European powers established systems of colonial governance designed to extract wealth and resources from their newly acquired territories. One such system was the encomienda system, implemented by the Spanish crown in the early 16th century. Under this system, Spanish conquistadors were granted control over entire indigenous communities. These conquistadors, known as encomenderos, were tasked with protecting and Christianizing the indigenous population. However, this protection came at a steep price. In exchange for their supposed tutelage, indigenous peoples were forced into brutal systems of forced labor. They toiled in mines, on plantations, and as domestic servants, enduring inhumane conditions and relentless exploitation. The encomienda system was, in essence, a thinly veiled form of slavery, sanctioned by the Spanish crown and driven by greed. It enriched a small European elite while decimating indigenous populations and stripping them of their land, culture, and humanity. The horrors inflicted upon indigenous peoples did not go unnoticed. Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish Dominican friar, witnessed firsthand the brutality of the encomienda system and the devastating impact of colonization. His writings, including a short account of the destruction of the Indies, exposed the atrocities committed against indigenous peoples to a wider European audience. Las Casas's accounts, though sometimes exaggerated for rhetorical effect, painted a chilling picture of widespread violence, exploitation, and cultural annihilation. He described in graphic detail the massacres, enslavement, and systematic dehumanization of indigenous peoples. Las Casas's writings sparked a fierce debate in Europe about the morality of colonization and the treatment of indigenous peoples. While his work did not end the atrocities, it provided a crucial voice of dissent and helped to expose the dark underbelly of European colonialism. His legacy serves as a reminder of the importance of bearing witness to injustice and speaking out against oppression. The colonization of the Americas was not a static event, but an ongoing process of displacement and dispossession. As European powers expanded their reach across the continent, they implemented policies designed to further marginalize and control indigenous populations. In the United States, the ideology of manifest destiny fueled westward expansion, justifying the seizure of indigenous lands and the forced removal of entire communities. Treaties were broken, reservations were established and then reduced, and indigenous peoples were continuously pushed to the margins of society. This systematic displacement had a devastating impact on indigenous communities, disrupting their traditional ways of life, severing their connection to their ancestral lands, and contributing to the erosion of their cultural identities. The legacy of manifest destiny is still felt today in the ongoing struggles of indigenous peoples for land rights, self-determination, and cultural revitalization. Colonization sought not only to control indigenous lands and resources, but also to eradicate indigenous cultures. European colonizers implemented policies of forced assimilation, aiming to erase indigenous languages, spiritual practices, and traditional knowledge systems. Children were taken from their families and placed in boarding schools, where they were punished for speaking their native languages and forced to adopt European customs. Sacred sites were desecrated, traditional ceremonies were outlawed, and indigenous languages were suppressed. Despite these efforts to erase their cultural identities, indigenous peoples have demonstrated remarkable resilience. They have fought tirelessly to preserve their languages, traditions, and spiritual practices, passing down their knowledge and stories from generation to generation. The survival of indigenous cultures is a testament to the strength, determination, and adaptability of indigenous peoples. The history of indigenous peoples in the Americas is not simply a story of victimhood, but also one of resistance. From the moment of first contact, indigenous communities have resisted colonization and fought to protect their lands, cultures, and ways of life. This resistance has taken many forms, from armed uprisings and strategic alliances to legal battles and cultural revitalization efforts. Indigenous peoples have challenged colonial narratives, asserted their sovereignty, and demanded recognition of their inherent rights. Their struggles have inspired social justice movements around the world and continue to shape the fight for a more just and equitable future. The legacy of colonization continues to impact indigenous communities today. The historical trauma of genocide, displacement, and cultural erasure manifests in ongoing social, economic, and health disparities. Indigenous peoples experience higher rates of poverty, unemployment, incarceration, and health issues than any other population group in the Americas. Addressing these disparities requires acknowledging the enduring legacy of colonization and its impact on indigenous communities. It is essential to move beyond simplistic narratives of the past and engage with the complex and often uncomfortable truths of colonization. Educating ourselves and future generations about the history of indigenous peoples, the injustices they have endured, and their ongoing struggles is crucial for creating a more just and equitable society. Supporting indigenous-led movements is not merely an act of allyship, but a responsibility. Indigenous peoples are leading the fight for climate justice, environmental protection, language revitalization, and cultural preservation. Their voices and perspectives are essential for creating a sustainable and equitable future for all. We can support indigenous-led movements by amplifying their voices, educating ourselves about the issues they face, and advocating for policies that uphold indigenous rights and sovereignty. By standing in solidarity with indigenous communities, we can honor their resilience, support their self-determination, and contribute to a future where the rights and cultures of all peoples are respected and protected.